Here's Brad Treliving speaking with the media down in Colorado.
What do you like about what you were able to accomplish today?
Yeah, well, we came in with a couple of objectives. You look at a bunch of stuff to try to help make the team better. But specifically, we wanted to look at the two areas, and one was on the blue line, specifically on the right side, if we could upgrade ourselves there with some experience and sort of with a profile, with a defending D, somebody that can help on the PK. Obviously, with Tanny out the last week or so, I wanted to make sure that we had that type of profile and try to spread those minutes out around a little bit more. I think the D's done a real good job this year, so I wanted to try to give a little help there with some experience, and then center ice position, and give us some depth there. And I think both players do. Before I talk about the new players, it's important, first off, to thank Connor Timmins, Connor Dewar, Fraser Minton, and Nikita Gurbenkin. Obviously, both Connors had been with the NHL team more than the young guys. And that's the tough part about today is you have to, in some cases, say goodbye to real good people. All four were great Leafs. The two kids, Nikita, I think he sort of captured his personality, captured everybody there. I said to him, more back check and there'll be a greater paycheck. And then Fraser, you can't say enough about Fraser. He's just a wonderful, wonderful young man. So to get good players, you got to give good players. So we're certainly happy with the additions of Scott and Brandon and wish Connor, the two Connors and Fraser and Nikita all the best.
When did you first start zeroing in on Brandon, and how difficult was it getting him from a division rival?
Yeah, Luke, it's a good question. When did we start zeroing him? He's been on our radar for a long time. You don't know when players are going to become available. Donnie and I had talked for a while. Donnie made a decision that he was going to go in a certain direction. As far as the rival thing, that's why Donnie's a good GM. I think he and one of the best GMs in the league, and why he's had so much success is, he's going to try to find the best deal for him. And so we were able to find a deal. But it's just the profile of him. He's big, he's long, great stick, defends the blue paint really well, excellent in the penalty kill, tremendous character. I'm talking both to him and Donnie today. He's been a big part of the success that's gone on in Boston, and they've had a lot of it. But he's been on our radar for a long, long time.
Is there salary being retained in that deal?
Yeah, there is. There's salary retained in both.
Can you tell us how much?
I've been up for a long time, so 50% in the Laughton deal and 15% in the Carlo deal.
It's been a pretty crazy 24 hours here. How would you describe this trade deadline for you?
I think it was, business as usual. I think it's busy. Deadline day is always busy, right? Deadlines force decisions in some cases. But I thought it was a busy day. You saw lots of activity in the league. I think when we talked last, just trying to find who was going to be available, right? We still got lots of teams in the race. So it was, it was a difficult trying to decipher who may become available. I think it went down to the last few days for some teams making decisions on which way they were going to go. But like every, you have to do your work ahead of time, and but credit to the staff. Staff did a good. We were prepared, and executed the plan.
When Florida and Tampa make the deals that they make, does that put added pressure on you, or is that you sort of stay the course there?
Well, if you're aware of what's going on in your neighborhood, right? So you're aware of that, but you got to be careful of just reacting, right? I know I talked about it the other day. You're trying to make your team better. Yeah, we want to get as many good players as we possibly can, but you got to be careful of just saying one team did this and now you got to do that. You're aware of what's going obviously around the league and in your division, conference, and all those things, but ultimately the job is to do what's best for you. Address areas that you need to address within your team setup, cap wise, roster wise, all those types of things. And then there's all sorts of variables that come into play, in terms of trade protection and all that sort of stuff. So you try to navigate that. Long way of saying you pay attention to the league, but you're focused, and you got to be real focused on and be disciplined on executing the plan that we set out really back in January when you have your meetings and you talk to your scouts regularly and you follow the team, and Chief and I speak daily, and that was what we tried to do today.
Given what you gave up, how important was term in getting the guys that you got that you kind of can game plan for beyond the season in terms of what you have?
Yeah, I mean, our situation, there's a lot of and I've said it before, there's times to do everything, right? In terms of rentals, but again, you got to be careful of what's going out the door for very potentially short term. So our focus, we were around the rental market to see what was going on. But like I said before, I was, as a group, we were focused on seeing if there's players that we can get for term, and the retention piece is important. It costs, right?
Yeah.
And so you take all that into consideration, but certainly finding players that were going to be here beyond this year was, something that we attempted to do.
Expect both guys in the lineup tomorrow night?
That's the expectation.
Yeah.
Weather looks okay. Travel, but yeah, both were excited, and both will be in tonight.
Yeah. What's the plan for Reeves? Is he actually going to play for the Marlies, or what's?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Ryan, that was a difficult conversation. Ryan's a true pro, and I don't, this isn't goodbye, right? Ryan's still a big part of our locker room. He's part of the team. Those are hard conversations. Good man. So, he's been assigned to the Marlies today. I'm going to speak with him later today. Him and I will get caught up, but we'll keep him going here, and my hope is we can get him back here sooner rather than later. But obviously you got to work within the guidelines there. But it's glad that Ryan didn't go anywhere today.
Scott's character seems to be such a big part of who he is and his game. How important was it to you to?
Yeah, I mean, Josh, you look at all that is a piece of it. You're looking for real good players, but I always find that good character people tend to follow success, and success follows them. Listen, I've been watching Scotty Laughton since he was in Oshawa, and he's been a captain wherever he goes. You look and see some of the things being said about him in Philly today, leaving. Just a character guy, and I can tell you, as hard as it was for him, he's been a Flyer his whole life. He was emotional talking about coming home, playing for the Leafs. So he's excited. I know that was a really important chapter in his life in Philly, but he's excited to start one here.
Were you surprised with how high the prices seem to be for buyers this year?
Yeah, right. What's the old supply and demand, right? Yeah, I mean the when there's not much, you can charge more, and that seemed to be the case here. And you're navigating it, and but certainly That was the sense coming in today. You know, we always like to try to get things done as early as you can, and I was hoping that the blue light specials would come on. They didn't come on as quick as I'd hoped, but no. Hey, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with managers that are really good at their jobs, and you know everybody's trying to do the best for the team. So, but there was, you know, I think the market dictates, and supply and demand, and you saw some sellers, teams that were selling, get good returns.
Despite the high prices, how significant was it that you were able to keep Easton Cowan in the organization?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, Easton, Fraser, you know, you want to keep all your players, but at the end of the day, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. So I put it two ways. It's my job to look at everything, you know, and nothing is ever off the table. But certainly, we think Easton's a terrific young player. It would have to have a significant impact for us, but you know that's the job. Our job is to make this team, you know, better every time that we can. And but glad today that Easton's part of it and still with us. And like I said, I didn't. You know, I figured that was going to be the case, barring something unforeseen.
Imagine there's some interest in Matthew Nyes. What has he shown you this season to make him?
Well, Matthew's still a young player, right? We forget second full season, right? Those players that come at the end of their college career and play you always feel like they've been around usually a couple years longer than they have. So he's just maturing into his body. His game's maturing. I think Matthew's just realizing how big and strong he is, and you know he's getting more comfortable. You know, we sort of growing right in front of our eyes. So you know he's a big part of our team now. We'll continue to be moving forward, and he's a unique player. You know, that's a big, strong man at 22 years old, and you know, developing different parts of his game. You see what he's done in the power play from net front. You know, developing an edge to his game. You know, added the element the other night into his game. So, you know, you can see a power forward developing right in front of us. Okay. Thanks, gang. Thanks for hanging out.
How much sleep did you get?
We might have called an all-nighter, but my all-nighter's back.
All right, there he is. Brad Treliving, who we believe will be calling in 25 minutes. He might fall asleep on us.
I felt bad for him. I mean, they're asking him to crunch numbers. He's like, hold on, I've been up forever.
What is it? So 50% retention on Scott Laughton and 15% on Brandon Carlo.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. 15 is still a bargain.
You're getting him for under $4 million.
Yeah, that gets him in at 3.48.
Okay. So like
let's
about
round up. Let's call it 3.5.
3.5 for
okay,
Brandon Carlo. But still, 3.5 for this year and the following 2 years.
Fantastic.
And you got McCabe's deal, which will be kicking in, right? Or I guess it already has. Tanev, Ekman Larson locked in, Riley locked in. Like you got 5 defensemen locked in, but you know, we can do the math on what all 5 of them are making. It's very reasonable.
Yes, and the cap's going up. Like the point being is you get a number, we'll call it a number 4, regardless of where you think he fits in your lineup. A clear-cut number 4 defenseman for under $4 million, $3.5 million, that's a win.
Yeah.
Do the math.
Do the math. Exactly.
And it puts, I think, Ekman Larson likely into the third pairing, which is where he always should have been.
That's where he should be.
That's where he was in Florida. Like, it was him and Kulikov on the third pairing. Like, that's what you want. A guy who's capable of moving up if need be. But ideally, give me 14, 15 minutes on the third pairing. Be a veteran guy. Play with some grit. A little bit of size. That's what they're looking for. So, yeah, and, you know, he said it. Ideally, you bring in guys with terms. Scott Laughton's got another year, and Carlo's got 2 more. So you made deals that were not pure rentals. I think that's important to point out.
Yeah, they were hockey deals, and they help your team, and they addressed a need. And I liked how he also said, like, you can't react to everybody. Like, you're trying to take care of your own house. You can't go, okay, that team did that, so we got to do this. Because who knows if you're going to play them? Like, that's the other thing. There's no guarantee that you're going to play, you know, Tampa or Florida. You may end up winning the division and playing the Rangers or Ottawa or something like that. And those team guys beat the hell out of each other. Then you move on to one of them. Like, to me, I think you just worry about what you can control. And, you know, I think they were good moves. They were shrewd moves. Yes, you have to give up players, but you didn't give up I mean, the first rounders, yes.
Well,
It is
they've
what
been
it is.
flying out the window for a long time, So,
Yeah. Yeah,
You know.
you might end up in the Pittsburgh situation at some point, but you have to go all in right now. Like, I mean, you have to, with reason, based on where guys are with this core. Mitch Marner is on an expiring contract. Tavares is on an expiring contract. You've got Austin in his prime, Willie in his prime. And Morgan Riley is, would you call it prime? Close to it.
Well,
maybe on the north
he's,
end
he's
of it.
30.
Yeah,
he's
30.
not over the hill.
Exactly.
well, we'll see, right? I think let's see if Carlo can rejuvenate him because he's having a
Exactly.
rough year.
Yeah,
There's
that's
no
fair.
doubt about
And
it.
that might have to go both ways.
Yeah.
Like Carlo has not had his best game the last year or so also,
But
right?
maybe
Like
they
you're hoping
work
for
off
him
each other.
get out, get into a new place, and they both feed off each other.
Yeah, and I think that could happen here. Like I think Frankie defended Morgan pretty well there in the previous segment, talking about how he has had instability back there, and I know a lot of fans like you can really sense the fan base is like, do we really have to blame Morgan Riley's partners for all of Morgan Riley's problems? Like he is the highest paid guy in your blue line core. Maybe he can take a little bit more of the load. Maybe he can take a little more of the responsibility. I think there's also the added complication, guys, of the fact that Craig Berube talked about it. He's tried to take some of the risk out of Morgan Riley's game. And I think anytime you do that to a guy with offensive instincts who likes to jump into the rush, I think you put a little indecision into his brain.
Well,
and you can see that in Morgan's game this year.
and the other thing, too, is we always look at just the stats. And we had Gio on. When was Gio on with us? Last week? Mark Giordano.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, yeah.
Let's not forget, they've gone to the 5-man power play. So there's no free points in the power play.
That's right.
Second assist for Morgan where he distributes it to Mitch and Mitch passes it to John or to Austin. And, hey, I got a second. You get 12, 15 extra points in the power play there. All of a sudden, he's not having that bad of a season. Look at his points per game. Look at that. Like, you got to look at the bigger picture. When you've got a 5-forward power play and he's not back there, now you got to go 5-on-5 points.
Yeah.
And they're leaner. They're a lot leaner. So, there is a trickle down effect. I hope that it stabilizes him to a point where his confidence comes back and there's a give and take there where you got a stabilizer and a guy can go.
Absolutely, because like Morgan's got to be better. He hasn't had a great season. He's got to be better, and you put him with. I would presume you put him with Brandon Carlo. You could have McCabe with Tanev and Ekman Larson. You got to find out who he's playing with. Is it Benoit? Is it going to be Myers? I'm not sure what they're going to do there.
Probably be a rotation.
Probably a rotation, and they'll find out who deserves it.
Yeah.
Come playoff time. And there's always in the playoffs generally the 6th and 7th guy. There's turnover. There's guys that come
Get
and
a
go.
lot of minutes.
But we heard Austin Matthews a couple of days ago, intimate that he would like to see some action, and other teams are doing something. What I think the team did again today was put a spotlight on those guys and say, "You wanted help? Here you go."
Yeah.
There's Scott Laughton's coming in and Brandon Carlo's coming in. And guess what? If we win or lose, it's not because of those two guys.
Right.
It's still going to be because of you guys.
Yep.
Right?
Guys we're paying all the money to.
You're getting all the money. You're the best players.
Yeah.
So when all of the dust settles on this and everyone's going to react one way or the other, at the end of the day, it's still going to be Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. Can they get the job done?
Yeah.
Can they get the job done come playoff time? Everything else, Tanev arriving, Anthony Stolarz here, Ekman Larson, all good players, all good moves. I think a better team today than they were at the end of last season. I think for playoff success. I think if you look at the way that they're built now, I think they've got a better kind of savvy playoff success type blueprint here and the ability to do something they never do, which is finish with that first seed, have an inferior opponent in the first round, and have home ice throughout. Like, it's right there on a platter for you. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the same guys that either do it or don't do it.
Yeah.
And we're not going to look back on this if they lose in the first round and say, well, they shouldn't have got Scott Laughton.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be, where the hell was Austin Matthews?
Yeah.
Did he show up? What is Mitch Marner doing? Did he show up?
And more importantly, maybe, where's Anthony Stolarz? Because
And Stolarz.
there's a lot of heavy lifting
funny,
for the
I-
goaltender.
I-
With Bob and Vasilevsky down in
Well,
Florida.
that's
too.
the thing. I had this argument on our goalie panel, and I didn't bring this up because it's not really. So everyone's like, Edmonton needed to get a goalie. Edmonton needed to get a goalie, and they're not. Are they comfortable in that? And I'm saying, well, at least Edmonton knows what they have. And then Marty Biron's like, I'm so comfortable with the Leafs goaltending, and I'm like, yeah, so am I in the regular season. But Anthony Stolarz has 0 starts in the playoffs. He has 1 appearance, and Joseph Woll has 4 starts in the playoffs. So there would be extreme pressure on that goaltending tandem, whoever starts, and we believe it's going to be Stolarz, because it's just uncharted territory. It doesn't mean they're not a fantastic tandem. It doesn't mean that you have trust in them with what they've done this body of work this season, because they've been great. It's just, we don't know. We know what Bob has done because we watched him lift the Stanley Cup last year. We know what Vasilevsky has done. We know what Shesterkin is capable of, and whoever else is going to be. Allmark has games in the playoffs and starts. These guys don't.
Yeah.
So that, this is going to be an ongoing conversation until it's not, because you just don't know. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball and go, hey, Stolarz is going to be unbelievable and he's going to win, 12 games in the playoffs or whatever. You name it, 14 games in the playoffs. He hasn't won one yet because we don't know.
So what do you think Mitch Marner's thinking today with this Mikko Rantanen situation where he ends up going to Dallas in the end, 8-year deal, $12 million per. That's his cap hit.
Yeah.
$12 million per. He just leaped over William Nylander. $500,000 more than Willie every year.
Yeah.
That's the marketplace. That's what he should expect.
That's what the league is telling you Mitch Marner should make, is $12 million per.
Well, if I'm speaking for Mitch Marner and I'm his agent, I'm saying no. Like if Mitch Marner goes where Mikko Rantanen did not want to go, chose not to go, which is the open market, free agency, $12 million will probably be the floor, right? Like
on a good team, on a winning team.
No,
exactly.
No.
But that's an important distinction. You're absolutely. If it's simply I want to get the most money I can get, then he'll get more than $12 million.
You're right.
And I would. My guess is if he's in Toronto, he'll get more than $12 million because that's the way the Leafs operate. But Rantanen, I think, was told by Colorado, and then Carolina, and now Dallas. You're a $12 million player.
Yeah.
Maybe 12.5 in Colorado, maybe 12.75 in Carolina.
If you want to win.
If you want to win and you want to play on these teams and you want to be a part of our program, this is what you can take. And Rantanen decided, I'll take it.
Yeah.
That is.
Like, don't the Leafs look at that and say, well, we have to apply the same logic here?
You should.
How could all these other teams that win all the time say, well, this is how we operate, but we're going to do it differently?
Why start now?
Well, but you're right, Dave, because you have to at some point.
Yeah.
You made the mistake every other time you negotiated.
Right.
At some point, you got to hold the line.
I'd like to think.
You'd like to think. I'm not holding my breath. Don't get me wrong.
I think at some point you go, this is what we have for you. You want to stay. You're familiar with the situation. You want to stay home. Here's 8 years. Here's all of that type of stuff. Here's the number. We're going to make it work. If you can't live with that number, go test free agency. It might be the Stamkos situation because
gets to the last minute.
But Stamkos went, right? Stamkos the first time took all the meetings, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Took the meetings.
Canadian Tire and all the endorsements he was going to get.
Gino was standing outside, I think it was Newport's offices. And Stamkos did the gauntlet. And then he called he called Yzerman. That wasn't even Julian Breesman.
Right.
He called Yzerman back and said, I'm staying. So we don't know what that scenario is. But Yzerman and Tampa said, this is the number. You want to stay? This is what it looks like. You don't? We're going to move on. Julian Brisebois moved on from Steven Stamkos, and he said, I got Jake Gensel. We were talking off air. Colorado said, Rantanen? No. Well, they're a better team on paper now because they got 3 different players.
Yeah, they bring Nelson. They bring Nelson in. They bring Coyle in. They get Nikushkin back. And they bring Natchez in.
Right.
And those guys added up. What do they add up to? Just about $13 million.
Yeah. What Rantanen would have gotten.
Yeah.
So the Toronto model, whatever they do in the playoffs, they're going to have cap space to go. We either can plug and play that player again, or we will do the Colorado. We will do the Carolina and go, fine, you'll move on. We'll use that cap space to grab player X. Sam Bennett's out there, or whoever.
That's where I think the Leafs are in the driver's seat also with the moves that they made today. The Carlo one in particular. Like if Carlo steps in and is a player of impact for this team, and he has been that at times in Boston.
Right.
Now, Boston decided to move off him, and you do have to wonder, what is the evaluation there? Why would they move off a 28-year-old defenseman with term?
Right.
Obviously, they saw something, or they decided we're gonna move off this player.
Right.
The Leafs like him. The Leafs bring him in. But what the Leafs now have is 5 veteran defensemen locked in on term. Both their goalies signed. Austin Matthews, William Nylander locked in.
Right.
Like that, regardless of anything else, is solidified and in place.
And Max Domi.
And Max Domi.
And Kelly Yarncroke.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
you got to
I'm
fill out your
joking.
roster.
I'm
Like,
joking.
obviously, you have other guys. David Kampf's got another year left, I believe.
Yeah.
But the point being is, you got Matthews and Nylander, you got 5 veteran defensemen and 2 goalies. Like, that's kind of the spine of your team. And then you got to determine what else you want to do.
Right.
Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here in studio. So, we've been talking about how Marner is possibly going to respond to Mikko Rantanen. And Rantanen deciding to sign for 8 years at $12 million. Now that means Mitch is, if he goes to free agency, he's the only guy that's at that level. I mean, Sam Bennett could get there. There's other players. But do you see a link at all, Marner, Rantanen, the fact that Rantanen's making 12 in the future? Should that have any bearing on the evaluation of how Marner thinks this will play out or how the Leafs believe it should play out?
It really depends if that conversation is happening on June 1st when it's just Toronto that can deal with them, or if it's happening on July 1st when you've got the entire market. And, you know, my impression right now is that Mitch Marner is more than willing to go to market. And if he gets to the true open market, I mean, think of our sport. It does not happen too often, right? A guy in his prime, it looks like he's going to have a 100-plus point season. We'll see what's to come. Maybe he's coming off a great playoff soon. There's lots of outcomes here. Just had a great Four Nations tournament with Canada. You know, I think the Rantanen number is less relevant if it's truly the whole field. Now, if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs and you're having that conversation, of course, Mikko Rantanen's got better career numbers than Mitch Marner. He's more accomplished player just by the pure numbers. So that would be a fair comparable to bring up. But, you know, if Mitch is willing to use his leverage, which, you know,
he's allowed to if he wants to.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not saying any of this is negative. I just think it's a fact of where Mitch is at in his career that he's able to do that. You know, I think that he can certainly surpass that. Depends where he signs too, right? Because there's a Dallas tax down on that amount. I mean, we know that Carolina offered Rantanen over $100 million, so that's over 12.5 times 8. He took less money than he turned down in Carolina, but it's a different sort of calculation because of the taxes and everything. So it's a long way to say this. In a perfect world, Mitch Marner probably earns a little less than Rantanen, but it's not perfect. And this is a supply and demand business. And right now, Mitch is in a tremendous spot. He was already in a great spot, but he's even in a better spot now because there is only one Mitch Marner out there. I think if it was both Rantanen and Marner hitting the market, you know, some of the teams would be bidding on the same guys. Mitch is right now 100% the top free agent in the entire NHL. Mm-hmm. Even if it doesn't go well in the next few weeks or month or two here, I think he's in a huge position to swing big.
In terms of Rantanen, when he was still a Carolina Hurricane, do we have any clarity on the Leafs and how much they were actually showing interest in him?
A lot. You know, I think
they were showing a lot of interest in him.
In Rantanen?
In Mikko Rantanen.
Yeah.
With the presumption they try to sign him long term?
Well, I think that they wanted to see what could happen. You know, even this whole Dallas thing, like the reason why today was so confusing from late last night till this morning till when they finally get the deal done is because the Stars weren't sure they could sign him either until whenever, you know, early afternoon today. Teams like the Leafs didn't know, you know, what Mikko Rantanen wants for sure. I think that there's been some general indication in the industry that Rantanen likes the idea of playing in cities, you know, that the Leafs could satisfy some of his criteria. Obviously a competitive team, great market. So the Leafs were 100% over many days in conversations on again, off again, I believe, with the Hurricanes to see if they could do something on Rantanen. I think there was different permutations of what that might look like. And, you know, when it got down to today, it sounded like Carolina wanted Nyes. They wanted at least a first. They wanted a prospect. Like, it was going to be a big package. And if you're the Leafs in that, you look at it and you go, okay, so we lose Nyes in the deal. I think everyone would say that's probably fair. Rantanen's an upgrade.
That's Logan Stankoven.
Right.
Equivalent.
And let's say you sign Rantanen. Just we're game theorying this out, but this is what the Leafs front office had to do. So then you've got your Rantanen, but Marner probably leaves then as a free agent, like 100%.
Right.
So you've lost Nyes, you've lost Marner to get Rantanen. Now maybe you're ahead then. That's what probably we got to debate in the bars and the coffee shops now. Yeah. But that was the decision the Leafs faced, and they just weren't interested in going there when push came to shove today. And you know, this has been a fascinating. Like, let's let's hope this is the beginning of a new era in the NHL. We got the cap going up. We got teams doing things we've never done before. You know, the Leafs have had to think about a life without Mitch Marner now because he's got a no-move clause. And as I mentioned, he's perfectly poised right now to walk away from the team, not because he doesn't like it here. And there's no drama. This could just be about dollars and cents for Mitch when push comes to shove.
If you're Eric Tulsky, the GM in Carolina, how do you justify what you just went through?
Well, I think his owner is very involved with what he does. So, you know, Dave, the way I look at that is you're always managing up in business.
Sure.
I mean, he's probably had to manage a lot of emotional moments behind the scenes there. But, you know, I think that these decisions were made in lockstep. So I don't think he has to justify it internally. Now, externally, the way you justify it is we want to be an organization that's going to take risks, that's going to 100% pursue winning at all costs. And you know, Julian Breezeball kind of had a point like this when he gave up the 2 firsts and made the trade he made the other day is, you know, Carolina wants to be a team that's taking big swings. And the deal they made for Rantanen on January 24th was a huge risk. And obviously, to some degree, like I think they've mitigated it with the return they get here. But it's hard to sit here and argue they have a better chance to win the Cup this season.
Right.
Now, longer term, maybe this worked out well. Keep in mind, Martin Necas was only signed next year. They already had a tough contract negotiation with him. He was the real jewel they gave up in the original trade. So he wasn't a long-term Hurricane necessarily either. And so what they've done, you've got Stankoven, 5 years of team control after this. Good young player, 2 more firsts, 2/3. I mean, let's see how this banks out. The industry, you're right though, Dave, is there's people laughing at them, scoffing at the set of decisions. But I think there's a world you can justify it, but the harder thing right now, if you're selling hockey in Raleigh, this team has been in the playoffs and won a series each of the last 6 years. It's hard to sit here and say they're going to win a Stanley Cup in year 7 of that. Like, it might be a small step back to go ahead.
They're a worse team today than they were yesterday.
Right.
On paper.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
really what it is.
No
now,
doubt.
you're right.
But would it have been better? And I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
But Rantanen was not performing there. He was not comfortable there.
I understand, but
So-
it just I always find it's tough. Like, this is a guy who was shocked with a trade. It's a new environment. It's rare that a guy hits the ground running.
Really,
It just-
definitely in Dallas? Like, is Dallas taking a gamble at all? That
Well,
like,
I
what if he
think
shows up and doesn't fit?
newness
I
in
mean,
your
that's free
environment,
agency, I guess. But
you know, not everything.
Well, he's used to it now.
I guess now the second time
These
you're a
trades are
veteran.
old hat for Mikko Rantanen.
But
He's
it
a
is.
veteran now.
It just, I think Carolina. You're right. With time, this trade for them, and they've got cap space to spend and all of that, they could come out on top. But right now, where we're talking about Eastern Arms race, they are a notch below it now because of the moves that they made. That's the way I look at it. Because Rantanen could have turned it on, you know, at some point into the playoffs. He knows. We know what he does. We don't know Stankoven, and we don't, you know, to me on paper, they're a worse team, and they've taken a notch down to the point where I think somebody might catch them.
Well, that's the thing, man.
Do you know what's weird when you look at it too? And like sometimes the teams that win the trade deadline don't win anything that really matters in the next 2 months. But the Metropolitan Division is kind of a mess. Like New Jersey, obviously dealing with the Hughes injury. You know, the Rangers have been buying and selling all year. I mean, Columbus, great story, but I don't think anyone sees them as a cup contender. Even Washington, like modest. You know, get Anthony Beauvillier today, who's played on 6 teams, I think, in the last 3 years. Like, the arms race is really only happening in the Leaf side of the bracket, at least in the East.
And that's been the case for quite some time with these Florida teams in particular. CJ, great stuff, man. Good seeing you.
You too. Sorry I was a bit late.
All good. There's Chris Johnston. We got Brad Treliving coming up, the GM of the Maple Leafs. He'll join us next. All right, OverDrive continues, powered by FanDuel. Get Mike Johnson in here later this afternoon. We'll get to our best bets. Leafs in Colorado tomorrow. Mark Masters was doing hits outside this morning in Colorado.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite understand why he was doing that.
Had
Like,
the
why
gloves on. It looked cool.
It looked very, very uncomfortable.
Where
and they
do
were like,
you want him to do it? Like,
how about in the hallway of the hotel? Why couldn't he be in the hotel room or something
Nice
like
backdrop, though. Hey,
Was that what it was?
Yeah,
Was the backdrop?
yeah,
It was
the
Harry
the
and Lloyd.
arena
he
and
wanted the rink in the
sculptures.
background. You're right. He
I
could have
got you.
done it from the lobby of the hotel, and nobody would have cared. That's the thing. Why
That's
Why
what I'm
does he have to
saying.
be at the rink?
Like he's out there. Like Claire Hanna was on. I think Kenzie was on. They were both at rinks, and it's very early in Denver.
But
I get
Kenzie
it.
was at the rink, and the Habs weren't even in town, and she
Right.
was at the Habs practice rink.
Exactly, which I guess she could have been outside. But Masters was like, I got
that's
to put
like
on my.
being-
You know what? If you're in Denver, go down to the PF Chang's. There's a PF Chang's right around the corner from the Westin. Do it from the parking lot, and then go in and have some Mongoli beef.
Maybe that's
What's he doing?
where the Leafs set up shop. I would love
Maybe.
it. That's where Brad Treliving was all day.
The war room,
PF
the
Chang's.
back room of the
buffet at
Let me
PF
get some
Chang's.
orange chicken and Scott Laughton, please. Here's the GM of the Maple Leafs, Brad Treliving. Where were you all day, Tree? What were you doing out there?
Well, I would have liked to have been in the PF Chang's there with noodles.
Yeah.
But, we were hunkered down here at the hotel. So yeah, busy day.
Absolutely. Well, let's go through the acquisitions. I guess we'll go in chronological order. You bring in Scott Laughton. He's an Oakville guy. He's got a year left on his deal after this. They retain 50% of the deal in terms of his cap hit. Third line center. I know you guys obviously went out and acquired it. The whole city, the whole fan base have been talking about it for a long time. Why was it important to make this acquisition, and why do you think Scott Laughton's the right guy for it?
Well, a number of things. I think, the first thing, as you said, I mean, he's a Toronto kid. And that's not the reason to bring him back here, but I've been watching Scott since he was playing in Oshawa. And the first thing that everybody talks about when it comes to Scott is just such a character guy. Yeah, I remember him, like I said, in junior, he's the captain of his junior team. Just the way people that have played with him, coached him, worked with him, just the highest level of character, very competitive guy. I think he just brings a lot of depth to the center ice position. As you said, it's an area we've tried to look at for a while now. And, even coming into this deadline, you saw, there wasn't a lot of centers available. I think this is the first deadline for, in recent memory where, there's a lot of teams going into the night before and two nights before the deadline where, they could have gone either way in terms of declaring whether they were, buying or selling. So trying to get a sense of what was going to be available in the market, and especially at the center position. It's a premier position. There's versatility in his game. He can kill penalties. He's got some bite to his game. So there's, to me, there's not much not to like about Scott. And I can tell you, here's a guy who, you listen to some of the words that were spoken about him in Philly when he left there, and the impact he had. And, it's an emotional day for him. I mean, this guy's been a Flyer his whole career, but he got emotional on the phone talking to him today, coming home, being a Leaf, what it means to him. So it was exciting to add him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him join the group here tomorrow or tonight.
So, yeah, you guys in Colorado, you're playing the Avalanche tomorrow night. I made the mistake of asking your head coach if he has an idea of what that Game 1 roster will look like in the playoffs. He shot me down pretty quickly last week, and so we're taking it day by day. But, as a manager, you have to be thinking, okay, this is how we can piece it together, and then Craig will, I guess, take it from there. And as it currently stands, you got Austin, John Tavares, Scott Laughton. I'm guessing David Camp is your fourth line center. Like when you look at that four pack up the middle and now the options that could go to the wing, how do you feel about your depth today as we creep closer towards the playoffs up front?
Well, Brian, you're always greedy. You always want more.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to navigate that. But to me, the object was you're trying to get as many good players as you can. I think we're a better team today than we were a day ago. I like our depth in the middle, but not just those four guys. The ability. I always think it's important to have 7 centers or 7 guys that can play the middle. It's such an important position. You're going to have injuries. Having guys that can move off the wall to the middle of the ice is critical. And we've got that now. We've got and can do the different jobs. Right? We needed to take we needed to take a little bit of weight off guys on the penalty kill, where I think Scott can help there. Any key situations, some defensive zone face-offs, some of the heavy lifting there matchup-wise. So, like I said, I like the look of it better today. I like the look today better than I did yesterday. And as you said, some versatility. The guys can sort of move back and forth. And as you know, we still got 20 plus games to go, and it's still a grind at the end of the year. So having that depth, I think, is important.
So you made the depth addition on the forward side, Brad, and now you also made a depth addition and more than that on the defensive side. What sort of was the defenseman market like, and how did you end up arriving at Brandon Carlo?
Well, the market was, it was a tight market. It was, as I said, earlier, trying to determine, who's in and who's out and who's available, and then those premier positions, not to put the wingers down, but the center iceman and then those right shot D are, they're hard to find, and you could tell by the limited product that prices were as good on the sellers. When there's limited product, you can charge what you want to charge and see if people want to buy. And Brandon's been a guy, obviously we've been aware of him and been a fan of his for a long time. I think he's been, and again, you talk to the Boston people, I think he's been maybe they've had great success in Boston over his tenure there, and maybe not the sexiest name, but I think he's been a big part of that success. Again, in some of the guts of the game pieces, penalty kill. He's a big man. He's long. He's rangy. He's got great reach. He's hard around the blue paint. So, I just thought adding another right shot D was important, and to handle some of those tough minutes. We've seen Tanny's been out here for a week or so, and to be able to distribute those minutes and have somebody that can handle some PK time, that was critical for us. So we like his size, we like his range. He's coming from a great program in Boston where he's been a big part of it. And again, he was excited about it today. It's a switch for him. I said I like the look of him already in the blue jersey than that black and gold thing he's had on. So, but real good. We were happy to get him. It was a grind. But we were happy to bring him aboard.
With Brad Treliving, GM of the Leafs, Avs tomorrow night. Now you look at it. You've been here for about a year and a half, 2 years. You have Morgan Rielly on term, Chris Tanev on term, Jake McCabe on term, Brandon Carlo on term, Oliver Ekman-Larsson on term. 5 veterans, 5 guys with multiple years on their deals. How beneficial is that for you as a GM to know that you have that locked in? You don't have any rentals currently in terms of those top 5 defensemen for you. What does that open up for you in the future, knowing that you guys have all these players locked in?
Well, it's important, and especially today. Listen, I've said it publicly before. I prefer when you're out spending assets. And listen, we were shopping in the rental market leading up to the deadline. We were shopping it the last 2 days. But you always prefer, you pay a price and you don't like to see it walk out the door, a few months later. So, the fact that we've got, an experienced blue line, one of the things when we came in here, we wanted to add some length to the blue line. I think there's lots of versatility there. You got some guys, some lefties that can play on the right. It's a veteran group. They all kind of do some different jobs. I think when we, a lot of time we put into, looking at how potential pairings would go and speaking a lot with Chief. And I think you've got puck movers, you got some guys that can defend hard. So, but having that cost certainty and having those defensemen, especially, the big thing with term is we're living in a rising cap era, and so when you can get those numbers locked in, the only day more difficult than the deadline day is July 1, and so when you're not out there shopping for defensemen, shopping for veteran defensemen, shopping for right shot defensemen on July 1. That was a big part of what we tried to accomplish here today. And like I said, excited about that group.
Tree, in your press conference, you talked about the human element, right? Guys that are going out. You thanked guys for their service with the organization. Now that you get through the deadline, do you address the troops? You go into the room and have a conversation. Hey, this is what we're doing. Now we're trying to continue to build a program for something special. Or do you allow Chief to have that conversation, or is it a combination of both of you?
Yeah, I'll go down there tomorrow. Like the way we were set up here today, I was at the hotel when the guys were skating. But yeah, I try to limit my time down there. They don't they don't need to see me down there a whole lot. But I'm going to talk to them tomorrow. This is our group now. This is I felt the group. It was my responsibility to add to the group. They deserve it. I thought we had areas that we needed to upgrade in. Like I said, you're always greedy. You always want more. You never know how it's going to flow, but this is the group that we're gonna jump into the fight with here starting tomorrow night. So, and I think there's, as Noodles, the other part of it is, the team. The deadline. The deadline is a difficult time because everybody's sort of wondering as a player, and we lose sight of that human part of it. And I know. You guys do such a great job, and there's, up in Canada, there's not much coverage of the deadline. But,
been here all day, Tree. We're as tired as you are.
Uncle. I mean, we had a TV on like Uncle. And, but the other part of it is, as exciting as it is, and that's part of our job. Hey, we all sign up for it. This isn't something that we should feel sorry for, but a lot of guys get uprooted today, right? Like guys are getting on planes away from families and all those things. And again, I'm not asking for anybody to feel sorry for them, but I think it's important that, we understand that too. So today we're excited about bringing a couple good players in, but we said goodbye to some good guys today who, they're packing up their stuff and jumping on a bird and their lights kind of got turned on its ear. So I think it's important that if things need to be handled the right way. Two good young players. Fraser Minton, who I think is going to be a terrific NHL player, and Nikita Gerbenkin, who we got to see in the Leafs uniform here throughout the year. Those are tough. But when you're looking to add your team, you got to give to get. And but I'll go in tomorrow, Noodles, and you always want to give the guys something. I think as you go in that deadline. The guys aren't stupid. They're looking around them and seeing where the competition's at. So you got to be focused on not just doing something to do something, but we tried to, kind of be focused and disciplined on attacking some areas that we thought we need to attack. But you always feel a little bit better when you can give the guys a little help the rest of the way.
Well, you guys have 20 games left to go, and a few games left against Florida, a game against Tampa. You're 2 points back of Florida with a game in hand. That top seed in the Atlantic, that's a pretty valuable spot, and I know you're aware of that. So we'll see where you guys take it from here, Brad. But I know it's been a busy day, and congrats on the moves you made, and we appreciate you taking time for us. We wish you nothing but success down the road. Thank you for this.
All right, guys. Good job today.
There's Brad Treliving, the GM of the Maple Leafs. And, we'll see.
He's as tired as us.
Not tired.
It's a long day. Well, you're up all last, and you're on the West Coast to an extent. You're in Denver.
Keep in mind, he's a guy that is relentless on the phone. So guaranteed those conversations were deep into the night last night, early in the morning today. You mentioned he's 2 hours earlier, so he's probably up at 5 a.m. making calls out east to 7 a.m. to GMs that are already in their office. It's a long, grueling time. So I'm sure he'll sleep well tonight and then back at it tomorrow. And that's a juggernaut there waiting. Waiting for you.
That's the thing. Multiple guys are going to show up. Brock Nelson will be there. I would assume Charlie Coyle will be there for Colorado. And it sounds like Laughton and
Coyle's going to fly out with Carlo.
With Carlo. Yeah, the two of them, Coyle and Carlo, will fly in probably together, I guess.
Well, no, maybe not. I think it's private bird.
You think so?
I think so.
Do you go fly? Boston's down in Tampa, though.
Oh,
That's
right.
what's like. Boston's got the Lightning tomorrow night.
Yeah, so you're right. So they're flying in from different cities, but I don't think it's
Like, who picks up
Sunwing
the bill?
flying out that like. Okay, so this is a great
would
story.
Colorado and the Leafs both be like, why don't we split a private berth? Can we pick one up, get both guys here, we'll split it? Like, is that allowed in the league?
I don't know what the protocol is, but didn't Mitch Marner and Austin fly back together from but they're teammates. But these guys are teammates that are playing against each
Well, and
other
they were
tomorrow night.
flying. Edmonton was flying back to Philly, right? And it was going to be like McDavid and Konechny and John Tortorella.
It is weird.
Didn't want to get on.
He didn't want to be on the bird.
But it is
naturally. Why would he? Of course, he's grouchy about
these
it. John
organizations.
Tortorella.
I still think it's a great story that Craig Conroy flew down to pick up Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. I think that this story is well documented. Like the private bird flew down and met them and brought them back to Calgary. Like it's a touch of class.
Yeah.
Yes, it costs money, but it's trying to show, hey, you're an important part of the organization moving forward. The Leafs, the deep pocket, they've got their own planes.
Oh yeah, they'll make sure the guys are going to be there.
Yeah,
I hear you.
Say it's not a ticket in row 3 on Sunwing or what's that? The Southwest.
That's right.
JetBlue. Like they'll be
Sunwing's the
taken
one
care
that's
of.
had an issue.
You're not
They
charging
get
them-
people down there. in
Yeah.
Mexico and Dominican.
I'm not throwing any.
They're not paying $75 to check their hockey bag.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
they'll be there.
Yeah,
but
they're gonna be
yeah,
okay.
it's going to be an emotional night.
Yeah.
For sure, for a lot of these teams, for every team.
Yeah.
There's every team in the league for the most part got involved in one way or the other.
Is there somebody that made 0 moves?
Did Utah do anything?
I think Utah.
Hear Utah at all.
I never
feel
heard
like
Utah.
I think Utah made like a move at the last. Now they extended Vemelka, who was out there in trade rumors as a goaltender. I swear I thought they made like a bit piece move or something like
Did
that.
Calgary end up?
I don't think
making any
Calgary.
moves?
Calgary did their moves.
Like they did the Frost and Farabee deal.
Yeah. I don't think. Is there a team? That's what we should have. Is there? I think there's a handful of teams that did nothing. Vegas. Did Vegas do anything?
That is what is surprising. Is
Montreal?
Vegas is generally the team that makes the most move, or makes some sort of a move, and they didn't really do that. All right, Mike Johnston will join us. Get him to grade the Canadian teams. Who he thinks came out on top with them. All the action that took place today, and we'll continue with where the Leafs go from here and where the other Canadian teams go from here. There was a lot of action on Trade Center today. All right, it's time for you to tell us where Al's brother was hiding this week. Call us right now at 416-870-1050, 416-870-1050. The first caller through with the correct location wins a pair of tickets to see the Leafs play the Ottawa Senators. Dylan Cousins will be in the lineup. And Fabian Zetterlund, your boy, Noodles.
My boy.
On March 15th. Another chance to find Al's brother and win Leaf tickets starts next week right here on OverDrive. Brought to you by McAlpine Ford in Aurora. Our family, the Ford family, and you. 416-870-1050. First one in gets to chat with Doogie and win a pair of tickets if you know where Al's brother's been hiding all week. All right, Mike Johnston coming up. We'll recap our chat with Brad Treliving and recap what was a really wild day in the end at Trade Center 2025. Also, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. sneaks in there with his details on what he's looking for in terms of contracts. We might have to get into that conversation as well. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.